Hey everyone, and welcome back to another video. Today, I'm making a baked French toast. This was something completely new to me, as I kind of combined two different recipes with my own twist. For this recipe, you'll need a 10 by 13 baking tray, a knife, and a cutting board. The first thing you see me doing is cubing a loaf of brioche bread. I know French toast is typically a piece of bread, but I thought it'd be interesting to bake it. As I'm cutting this up, I'm making sure the cubes are roughly the same size as each other, as I'll be covering the bottom of the pan with some of the cubes. Before I do that though, I wanted to make sure I had everything else cut up. So I began cutting up about a pound of fresh strawberries. While I chose to use fresh strawberries, you can use frozen strawberries, bagged strawberries from the grocery store, anything you can really find. I just like the fresh strawberries because it adds more depth to the recipe. You can also I'm just including the strawberries for that extra depth. I feel like a lot of French toasts are just bread, and I thought the strawberries would be a nice fruity way to change things up. So you'll need to make sure to cut up the strawberries into even chunks so that they cook properly. And I found that the best way to do this was to cut the leafy green part off first, and then diagonally cut them down and just individually cut up the slices until they were about the size of your nail. And honestly, this just took me a little bit of time, and so once I finished that, I decided it was time for the cream cheese. This was to add extra flavor into the French toast, and it's something kind of unique I would never thought of adding until my uncle suggested it. I cut up the cream cheese into strips before roughly cutting them into chunks as well, and this is just to make sure I can evenly spread it across the baking tray. I then sprayed my baking tray with nonstick spray so the bread wouldn't stick. Then I added about half the cube bread and made sure that everything was evenly spaced apart. Then I added all the cube cream cheese and about 3/4 of the strawberry, then added the remainder of the bread on top. Then, in a separate bowl, I cracked 12 eggs and combined it with a third of a cup of maple syrup, 2 cups of whole milk, a half a teaspoon of salt, and 1 teaspoon of vanilla. This is to make a mixture that'll go over this bread and sit overnight. And one tip I would suggest is to warm up the maple syrup so that it would mix and pour better. After all these ingredients were in the bowl, I began whisking them together with a fork and a whisk to make sure everything was all combined. I then made sure to evenly coat the entire baking tray with the egg mixture, pouring slowly over the bread. I then covered it with tin foil and let it sit in the fridge overnight, and cooked it for 30 minutes covered and 30 minutes uncovered the next day. I hope you like this French toast.